People of Reddit, who was the dumbest person you met? A customer who thought he should be able to get the Jordan Bread 11s for 90% off because of 2 coupons he had. One of these coupons was a print out of a 70% off clearance promotion from Nike's website, and the other was a 20% off coupon from Payless that expired in 2017. I've never been more confused, frustrated, and exasperated than I was during the 10-minute interaction where myself, 2 managers, and a customer tried to explain to this man why this wasn't going to happen. I know a woman who bragged on Facebook that she scored 84 on her IQ test. She thought it was out of 100. I was put in charge of training a girl at a coffee shop worked at. She didn't know how to make coffee. I literally had to tell her, okay, now pour the coffee in until it reaches this line. No, pour it slower, don't dump the whole pot over the cup. When trying to train her on register, I don't know if she couldn't or just refused to count. A total would be $5.98 and she'd tell the person it was $6. When people gave her anything but bills, she'd stare at the change and ask me how much that was, or she'd say that's $2, right? And there'd be like 50 cents on the counter in dimes and pennies. I tried training her on sandwich station. She would pack the food frozen into the bags and just hand it out. On her breaks, LD have to constantly remind her that 15 minutes means 15 minutes, not 20, not 30, not an hour. We were allowed to have food at work for free within reason and only in the back. She would reach into the pastry case with her bare hand, pick up an item and just eat it at register or right next to the case. There was a lot more she'd do wrong, and it got to the point where I thought she was trying to purposefully get fired. We were in history class, taking a pop quiz. One of the questions was, where is Pearl Harbor? Someone raised their hand and asked, who is Pearl Harbor? And why would I know where he is? It's me. I had trouble focusing in school and thought Pearl Harbor was a person. A girl who agreed on time changes but disagreed. I was talking to her on my Sunday when it was her Saturday. I lived in Australia at the time. My former boss was worried that the island of Manhattan would sink with all the extra visitors for New Year's and the ball dropping. She thought islands float, and when she found out that wasn't true, she thought it was so funny that she told everyone the story. She was later fired for withholding a pay raise from someone on her team because he didn't accept her sexual advances. He had the texts to prove it. My first girlfriend, about 20 years, I showed her one of those newspapers at the time that had made up stories about alien abductions, etc. Weekly World News, I think it was. One of the headlines was Belgium destroyed by giant asteroid, and no one noticed for 2 months, and she thought it was real. Thing was, she wasn't actually dumb, just really innocent and naive. I remember when I was little my brother continued to have many strange misconceptions, but I can't remember any except the one where he said Martin Luther King Jr. was one president of the US, otherwise, how could he have stood on a podium? Ex-girlfriend. I once said out loud, I wonder how dolphins have sex. She said, with conviction, there aren't boy dolphins and girl dolphins. They're just dolphins. You know, like magical. And she argues with me for about 2 hours. Trees aren't real, because they don't move, kid, I overheard at a bus stop. My ex-GF thought rhinoceroses were dinosaurs. Then, we were watching King Kong, and toward the end of the movie she asked if it was based on a true story. I hope she's pretty. Her grades say marry rich, but her looks say study hard. For months, I've been dealing with a client who doesn't get their bills. Every month, they call and ask where it is, we confirm their address and the expected arrival date. I manually generate a new invoice, and email it over. Today, when confirming the address for like the 6th time, they said, oh, no, that's not my town or zip, and submitted an address change. How the hell do you not know where you live? Worked at a bank for a, blessedly, short time. Had a 60-year-old woman that asked, what do you mean my account balance is negative? I still have checks, so I still have money. Had a friend in HS that could predict rain by looking at the stars. If the Big Dipper was upside down, the water would pour out and it would rain tomorrow. She was 17. Holy shit, I'm ready. Let me tell you about this woman that my uncle dated for a while. She was really a special kind of dumb. I'm just gonna go ahead and list the top 3 that I can remember, but I'm sure there's more. These were all relayed to me years later as I wasn't around at the time. It's a running joke between some family members. Thought pork chops came from horses. Met a guy who had lost a portion of his ear in some kind of accident. Upon meeting, she just asked him with no class at all, "Hey, what happened to your ear?" His response, "I turned my head too fast and bit my earlobe off." She was totally cool with that answer. Went grocery shopping and assumed that whatever number of chicken legs came in a pack was how many legs that chicken must have had. There was also something to do with a moose, but I can't remember the specifics on that. Ex-friend. Got into a massive, almost physically violent argument and told her to leave my apartment and get out of the complex since she didn't live there. She said I don't have to. This is government property. I was like, bitch, no. Just no. The police came and informed her opposite. That was satisfying. A girl in my class in high school asked the teacher where the sky was. Like she genuinely had no idea, and when we tried to explain to her that the sky was above us outside, she was like, no, that's the ceiling. I'm on a soup and water diet. Tonight's soup is creamy bacon potato. A friend's partner said she was vegan. Another friend jokingly said, you're not vegan, you eat corn on the cob, which is actually the spine of a cow. Aforementioned friend's partner started crying about how much she loved eating cow spine and was really upset, genuine tears of sorrow at how she wasn't a vegan at all. From that day forth, corn was known as cow spine on the cob, and their relationship didn't last for too long, probably a week after she asked why Mel Gibson didn't just phone the English king to negotiate in Braveheart. In 4th grade, we had a motivational speaker come in and talk to us who was completely blind since birth. At the end, they had time for questions, and a girl asked why they didn't just wear super thick glasses. When the person replied that they cannot see anything, so there would be nothing to magnify, the girl said, no, like super thick glasses. We were only in 4th grade, but we all were looking at her like, holy shit, how do you not get this? The blind dude just shook his head. I worked a security post with a guy who didn't understand the concept of gravity. I thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. To be fair to him, he did pick it up pretty quick when I taught him. Uncle telling us about a guy he worked with. Guy buys a nice, new car. Car comes with cruise control and built-in GPS. Guy wrecks new car. Apparently he typed in an address and set the cruise control. He thought that he didn't have to drive after setting in where he wanted to go, the car would just take him where he wanted to go. True story. Kid in my neighborhood. Someone must have told him that if he shone a flashlight in one ear, light would come out the other ear. He didn't know I was looking. He held a flashlight to one ear and his open palm at the other. He turned on the light and tried to turn his head real fast to see his palm. He did this several times. Never caught the light. I was in awe at his stupidity. My ex convinced her that rubbing a portable speaker on her head would charge it because of the static electricity. In 3rd grade, I was talking with another kid about kiwi birds, and she proceeded to tell me that those birds laid kiwi fruit instead of eggs. My old roommate. He put an electric kettle made of plastic on the stove. I came upstairs to black smoke as it melted. I threw it in the trash and yelled at him for nearly burning the house down. It has a cord sticking out of it and everything. An hour later I came back upstairs to the same thing. Motherfucker went through the trash and put it back on the stove. I get the first time if he's never seen an electric kettle before, but a second time? With the same kettle? A melted fucking kettle? The guy doesn't even do drugs, for fuck's sakes. I don't know about dumbest person, but I once had a student complain her grade changed every time I graded something. I use a total points system, points earned / points available *100 equals %. I said yes, it will change every time because the numerator and denominator are changing every time we'll grade something. That's how math works. Student said, I know how to do math. Me, I don't think you do, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. This dumb girl I went to middle/high school with blew the breaker to half the school when she decided to make instant cup noodles for lunch, but didn't realize that she needed to use water. The whole cup caught on fire. Met a dude sophomore year of college. I told him the story of the dumbest personnel had ever met up to that point, and his response was, well. That's understandable though, up until last year I didn't know the US and the United States were the same thing. We went to college in the US and again this was our sophomore year. Dude was a 19-year-old full-blooded American. When I was in middle school, like age 12-14ish, we went to the local college. I stopped by the college bookstore and bought a pack of gum. The gum was like $0.96 after tax. The clerk, a college-age girl, entered the gum in the cash register, and I gave her $1 for the gum. She proceeded to count out 96 cents in change to me. I was so embarrassed for the girl, I didn't dare say anything, so I took the money. But then I felt bad and thought she might get in trouble, so I went back and asked her if maybe the gum cost $0.96 and she only owed me $0.04 in change. I mean, hard to judge a person for one interaction. Maybe she was thinking hard about quantum mechanics and just couldn't devote enough mental energy to the gum-dollar exchange deficit function. But it definitely lowered my opinion of college students at the time. Friend thought syphilis was what you got from eating raw chicken. He told our whole economics class he got syphilis one time. A classmate named Rebecca had many instances of just jaw-dropping idiocy. Two of my favorites were, after listening to a presentation on why a pool hall would be a great addition to a bar, that's great and everything, but where's the pool? Reading out loud her paper on recognizable structures, the Parthenon is important. Because it is big and it is good. I think it's the confidence behind anything she said that just made it hard to overlook the ignorance. My old coworker. She wasn't dumb per se, but she was naive, and accepted and followed every fact fed to her by her so-called friends. It was quite sad to witness, really. Hearing them discuss this and that, and to be so firm with their opinions and thoughts without first fact-checking every Facebook post they come across with, it would always cringe the hell out of me. It's been years since I last spoke to her, but I do hope she's capable of making her own opinions now, and is surrounded by better people. I worked at a sign-making place. We had an order for bespoke name signs for doors, but the size stated on the order form was 7 millimeters. The sign makers assumed they meant 7 inches, so made them to that size. Customer called kicking off, they were not the right size and they wanted them exactly as stated on the order form. Fine, 7 millimeters signs coming up. Our sign makers queried this several times but eventually agreed to make them. Customer called again kicking off, going absolutely spare. How can you think anyone would want signs this small? Etc. I read out the order form, we scan copies onto the system, referred back to their complaint about 7 inches not being right and being adamant that we make them to the exact size mentioned on the order form. Customer then proceeds to argue about the size they requested, and I had to ask the customer to get a ruler and look at the mm and measure 7 millimeters, and she still argued, saying I was wrong. Obviously arguing about how big a millimeter is attracted laughs from around the office, and I ended up having a crowd around me trying to listen in as this person screamed at me. Ended up escalating to my manager, who refused to refund the signs or remake, and if they wanted them a different size they'd have to put in a new order, and hung up. This was 20 years ago and I still think about it. A girl I used to work with in a call center. She used to ask me stuff like, why do trees grow upwards? Or the sun goes round the earth, doesn't it? Then one day she asked me, does the earth spin and clouds stay still, or does the earth stay still and the clouds move? Imis urea. I met a kid in Army basic training who said that he had pneumonia, pronounced pneumonia. He was convinced that it was a more serious form of pneumonia because it was pneumonia.